So we've got a few people on. If you are watching live and you're able to use the YouTube chat, that would be great. I've had no questions so far, so if you want to throw some questions at me, now would be a good time to do that. Let me just try this again. Yes, that's working. So I say I've had no questions. I just checked my emails and I checked my WhatsApps. No questions there. So you can ask questions today based on yesterday, which was Mandy preaching on the Mary and Martha stories. So the story where Martha is off doing lots of stuff and complaining and huffing and puffing, and Mary is commended by Jesus for sitting at his feet as a model disciple. And then there's the story, there's the death of Lazarus, which Mandy very passed over very quickly. And then there is the anointing, where Mary anoints Jesus with oil and then wipes his feet with her hair. So there are a few people around. Let me just check emails, WhatsApps, nothing. So right. So I've only listened to Mandy's sermon once through, and so if you've not yet had a chance to do that, I'd recommend you go and listen to that. I thought I would just maybe pull out a few points from 2 weeks ago. I had quite a few people come up and talk to me afterwards about there was the story of the worried father, and that whole I do believe helped me with my unbelief, and that whole area around um, how we believe what God can do, how we make sense of unanswered prayer, and how we make sense of it when we believe God can do something, but He doesn't do something. And it's from conversations I had afterwards, it seemed to be a topic that lots of people struggle with. And I know certainly from experience of people that I've known, um, and maybe people that have kind of gone away from the faith, it's quite often around these questions of trying to make sense of why, if God can do something, doesn't He do something? There's also in here the whole kind of questions about what is prayer. I think far too often we think that prayer is us bringing a list of requests to God, and rather it's us putting ourselves in a position where we are acknowledging that God is God, when we acknowledge that He is in control, where we submit to Him and to His will. We trust that He knows what He's doing, and that the plans that He has for us, He has a reason for that. Certainly, if you look through a lot of Paul's prayers in the New Testament, so if you kind of start from Romans onwards and kind of look at the things that Paul prays for, they're quite different things to the things that we might often pray for. Um, um, there's the story of I can't think where it is off the top of my head, somewhere in Acts, obviously. The story where Peter's miraculous escape from prison, and so the angel leads him out of prison, and then leads him. He ends up outside the door of a house where people are praying, and they don't let him in because they're not expecting to see him, kind of thing. And I do wonder whether they were. I mean, were they praying for his release or not? Were they praying um, that he would remain faithful to the end, that he'd remain courageous that he take every opportunity that he had to talk about Jesus. We might, we would automatically assume that the thing you pray for is a quick release. But maybe that's not what they were praying for. Maybe they were praying for something else altogether. I listed last week, I went through some verses that we might find helpful. One that I didn't mention, which I might just throw in here, is what might be potentially one of the most misquoted verses. So it's from Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13. And it's quite often when you hear it read, lots of versions have it down as something on the lines of, I can do all things through him who gives me faith, or gives me strength. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. In the latest version of the NIV, it actually says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So I can do all this through him who gives me strength, rather than I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Either, in the Greek, it's the key word that changes in those two options is not there, and so I can do all through him who gives me strength. And so it could be this or all things. Within the, if we take the latest NIV version, which says I can do all this, Paul's just been talking about the secret of being content in any and every situation. So Paul has learned to be content, whether he's got lots, whether he's got nothing, whether he's living in plenty, whether he's living in want, whether he's hungry, whether he's well fed. And Paul then says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength, which is quite a different meaning to I can do all things through him who gives me strength. So that's just, I'll just throw that out there as something that you might find interesting. Throws quite a different light on it, that actually God's Spirit working in Paul doesn't give him the strength to do anything he wants, but it does give him the strength that whatever situation he's in, whether it's good or bad, he has learnt to be content. Just earlier on in that same chapter, he said, rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice. And so kind of that fits nicely with that idea of being content, rejoicing in all situations. I still don't think I have any questions. Let me just check. Email, no. WhatsApp, no. I can't remember whether I mentioned this last week or not. I didn't have time to kind of refresh my mind this morning. But the idea that our actions as disciples impact Jesus' reputation. So the disciples hadn't been able to heal this boy. And so when the father comes to Jesus, maybe part of his uncertainty about whether Jesus can heal is as a consequence of the disciples not being able to do it. So because the disciples weren't able to do it, now this man is maybe questioning, well, maybe Jesus can't do it either. And so the actions of his disciples impacted upon his reputation. And just kind of thinking about how our actions as Jesus' disciples, what kind of impact do our actions have on Jesus' reputation? Do we enhance his reputation, or do our do the things that we do and the things that we say have a negative impact on Jesus' reputation, that people don't want anything to do with Jesus because of the way that we behave? They're totally turned off Christianity because of the way we behave. Or are people attracted to Jesus because of the way we are? So that's only what's that been, 10 minutes? As I say, I don't feel the need to talk unnecessarily, and as there are no questions that I'm aware of anywhere. Sue says hello on the chat. Some of you, there are, according to my numbers, there are a few of you watching, and so I know some of you haven't been able to work out how to do the YouTube chat yet. I've had an email from Mary saying that she's watching, but she can't do the chat. But maybe if some of you want to know how to do that, then ask me on Sunday. Yeah, I think I will call it a day there. Thank you for watching. So we're carrying on Sunday. We're looking at Jesus' encounter with some religious leaders, which doesn't go well for them, as we will see on Sunday. Okay, I will see you then. Bye.